Good morning, beloved. This is Pastor Rodney Adams, Big Calvary Baptist Church, with the moment meditation. No doubt, as you examine and evaluate the things that are happening in the world today, you see that evil has increased its presence in every facet of life. But this is nothing new, for the Bible has taught us to expect this. In Matthew's Gospel, chapter 24, Jesus told us that in the last days, we should take heed that no man deceive us. He said, "For many shall come in his name, saying, I am Christ, and shall deceive many." Jesus teaches that there will be mass deception in the last days. Isaiah chapter 5, verse 20 tells us that we will be living in a time when men are calling evil good and good evil. And we see that happening all around us today. In 2 Timothy chapter 4, Timothy, Bible says, is being instructed by Paul what to expect in the latter times. He says the time is going to come when men will no longer want to endure sound doctrine, but after their own lust, they will heap to themselves teachers having itching ears. And he says they'll turn their ears away from the truth, and they'll be turned to fables. What Paul is telling Timothy is that people that once were faithful, people that once were dedicated to the things of Christ, will begin to turn from Christ. People that were dedicated to living a biblical, sound life will begin to compromise their walk with God, begin to turn to things that are contrary to the scriptures which they've learned. Jesus himself taught us that there would be divisions within households. In Matthew's Gospel, chapter 10, verse 34, he says, "Think not that I am come to send peace on earth. I came not to send peace, but a sword. For I am come to set a man at variance against his father, and the daughter-in-law against her, the daughter against her mother, and the daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law, and a man's foes shall be they of his own household." Jesus is not saying he's coming to cause division, but he's saying that he's coming to cause men to take a stand. That people are going to have to choose whether or not they're going to align with God or they're going to align with Satan and the practices, behaviors, and mannerisms of this world. And he's saying when he came on the scene, he was going to bring light, and people were going to have to choose to walk in light versus darkness. Paul told Timothy in 2 Timothy chapter 3, verse 13, that evil men and seducers would continue to wax worse and worse, deceiving and being deceived. Beloved, these are the days that we're living in. Jesus said that as it was in the days of Noah, so shall it be in the days of the coming of the Son of Man. And we saw in Genesis chapter 6 that when men began to multiply on the earth, that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every imagination of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. So I'm saying these things because I don't want you to be surprised. I don't want you to be shocked, because God is still in control. He's aware of all these things. As a matter of fact, he foretold us that they would be happening. And God understands who has aligned themselves with him. 2 Timothy chapter 2, verse 19 says, "Nevertheless, the foundation of God standeth sure, having this seal, the Lord knoweth them that are his. And let everyone that nameth the name of Christ depart from iniquity." So he tells us God knows who's his. He knows who's standing for righteousness. He knows who has made a decision to live a biblically centric life. And he knows who opposes him. But he wants you to be clear. If you name the name of Christ, if you say you're a born again believer, you have to depart from iniquity. And we've talked about iniquity being sins that are internal, sins of the heart, things that are happening inside of us that may not necessarily be seen clearly from the outside. So God is telling us, make sure our heart is right with him. See, he goes on to say there in 2 Timothy chapter 2, verse 20, that in a great house, there are not only vessels of gold and of silver, but also of wood and of earth, some to honor and some to dishonor. That in this great big world that we live in, there are vessels of gold and silver, but there are also vessels of wood and earth. That you're going to have people that line themselves up with God and people that choose to align themselves up with evil. Some people will bring honor, some people will bring dishonor. And then he tells us to choose. He says in verse 21, if a man therefore purge himself from these, he shall be a vessel unto honor, sanctified and meet for the master's use, and prepared unto every good work. Beloved, God knows who's his, and he's counting on us to be light in the midst of darkness, to allow our light to so shine before those around us by demonstrating the benevolent love of God, that they'll see our good works, but glorify him. We need to dig a little deeper. Let's get together again soon. It's a moment of meditation. I'm Pastor Adams. Think about it.